Heidi ho! I just said goodbye to a few of you. The rest of you, I'll be seeing next week. It is Tuesday afternoon, right after lab, and I thought this is a really good time for me to finish chapter 3. So what we're going to do is we are going to be talking about the other side of the equation. Last time, we were talking about energy and how all cells, including plants, all cells extract energy from high energy containing macromolecules in the same way through a process called cellular respiration. And what did we say happens? You basically rip that molecule from limb to limb. You take the technical term for ripping it from limb to limb is decarboxylation. You take it apart. You start out with, our example was glucose, a 6-carbon molecule, and we said that what happens to each of those carbons? It becomes a 1-carbon carbon dioxide. And we said, why do you breathe? We said you breathe because you need that oxygen to absorb the electrons that were let go from the macromolecules that you ripped from limb to limb, right? You decarboxylated. And so what that does is it produces an excess of electrons. They have to go somewhere. We talked about this elaborate process where they went through an electron transport chain to make energy, right? To make ATP. And then the now low energy electrons, because remember we said the electrons are what hold energy. So the now low energy electrons combined with oxygen and 2 of those protons, remember hopefully you saw part 2 where you're completely confused. We said that we have some protons. And what are protons? The hydrogen atoms without an electron. And we had talked about them flowing through ATP synthase. You might be remembering now. And so anyway, you have all these excess of protons and you breathed in oxygen. And that's why you breathe, so that you could then combine with these now low energy electrons and make water, oxygen, and 2 of those hydrogens without electrons, plus 2 electrons, and you've got H2O, water. That's it. So we said it's always these 2 processes, photosynthesis and cellular respiration, we said they're always taught in kind of a backwards manner. We had said that that in reality, it all begins with the sun and photosynthesis. But traditionally in biology, we teach cellular respiration first, and then we go back and talk about photosynthesis. So with photosynthesis, it's the opposite of cellular respiration. So what did I just tell you? I said we said we ripped that molecule from limb to limb or whatever. We decarboxylated. We made CO2 and we made water. So with photosynthesis, if we're going in the opposite direction, we say we start with CO2, add in some water, add in some sunlight energy, and you make a biological macromolecule. So it's CO2 plus water plus sunlight energy makes sugar plus oxygen. We'd said on. So before we said you can't break down that sugar fully, efficiently without oxygen. So if this is the reverse, we had said CO2 plus water plus energy makes glucose plus oxygen. So let's think about that. What does that mean? It means that Plants breathe in CO2 and they exhale oxygen. Just the opposite of you and me. They do. And now they don't breathe, they don't have lungs. You say, well, where are their lungs? They don't have lungs, but on the underside of that leaf, we have little openings called stomata. And they're like these little tiny lips. And what do? They open up to allow CO2 in and oxygen out. All right. So photosynthesis, I'm just glancing over at my slides here. We've got slides to go with this talk. And you say, how do plants trap light energy? That's slide number 1. And we say photosynthesis. The second point on the list says autotrophs. And that literally means self-eating. And what it means is they don't need food, they just need sunlight. And then we see electromagnetic spectrum and photons. So electromagnetic spectrum, that's just referring to light, different colors of light, and photons are the energy, are the form that they take. And then the last two points on that slide number 1 are chlorophylls and keratinoids. This is the color. And believe it or not, that color is going to play a role in capturing sunlight energy. So the green pigments are the chlorophylls. Slide, let's see if we can go. Slide number 2. If you think about it, when you see a color, it's hitting that beautiful green leaf, and what's happening is a lot of that light is being absorbed by the green, but it's reflecting the wavelengths, the portion of the light that is green. It's sort of the opposite of, so if we say we have a photosynthetic pigment that looks green, it absorbs everything else except for the green. And so the green hits your eyes and you say, oh, what a beautiful green plant. In reality, it's absorbing the reds and the blues and the violets. These colors are being absorbed. Now, what about, we said the photosynthetic pigments consisted of chlorophylls, those are green, A and B, they're both green, and keratinoids. Sounds like a carrot, right? Carrots are yellow or orange. Where else do we sometimes see yellow and orange? Not in carrots. We're talking leaves here. This time of year. If you look out the window, I see a yellow and orange maple right there. So why am I seeing that? They're green, right? They are, except for this time of year. Not me, this time of year. They're green except for this time of year. What has happened? They have lost the chlorophylls that hid these other 2 pigments, the keratinoids and the xanthophylls, these orange and yellows. These are secondary pigments that are there. You just don't see them because of the green. And then in the fall, the chlorophyll disappears and all that's left is those yellow and red pigments, the keratinoids and the xanthophylls. So these non-green pigments. Okay. All right. So slide number 4. We'll talk about it, and then I'll stop right here for this video, for this blog, whatever we call these things. So we're looking, slide number 4, we're looking at a leaf in cross-section. And the top part is the top part of the leaf, and the bottom part is the bottom surface of the leaf. And you can see a stoma. And if you look really carefully at that picture, I'll show it to you. On the bottom side of that, you see it says CO2 in and O2 out. What is that saying? That's where we said they're breathing. You know, it's breathing in CO2 and releasing oxygen. So it's the green parts. The other thing you saw, make sure you look at the slide, you saw these little balls. And in lab, just now and before the one-day holiday, you looked at plants. You looked at that little aquatic plant and you said, oh, look, there are little green balls in there. Those are called chloroplasts. They're green because they have that pigment. And what is the job of that pigment? Capture sunlight energy. We're going to stop right here and then I'll come back and we'll talk about those chloroplasts.